We are going to win. Iran has survived occupation after occupation over its long history. Our culture, our resilience has survived. Nothing can erode that. Their blood is the fist that is going to bring down the Islamic Republic. This round, we are determined that this is the last battle against the Islamic Republic.
Today on Eye for Iran, as President Donald Trump issues a final warning to Tehran and U.S. military assets appear to be moving into place, the question many are asking is, are targeted strikes against the Islamic Republic now around the corner? We'll unpack what may come next with Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus.
It's only a matter of time before the U.S. will conduct strikes against the Islamic Republic.
Then, disturbing new reports that detainees inside Iran are being forcibly injected and killed in custody. We speak with former political prisoner and human rights activist Shiva Mahboubi, who was tracking those reports.
Instead of executing them and announcing them, which bring more outrage, what they do, they're killing them with injection.
And as Iranians look toward a future beyond the Islamic Republic, how can regime kleptocrats be held accountable and their stolen billions be recovered? We'll discuss that with Judge Mark Wolf, a retired U.S. federal judge and chair of the Integrity Initiatives International.
Freeze, seize, and repatriate, return to Iran, in this case, illicit assets.
And finally, Khosro Isfahani, a senior research analyst at NUFDI, the National Union for Democracy in Iran, joins us to break down the regime's war of narratives and information warfare.
Pain, but resolve. It's repeated in every call, every message. People are done. They want the Islamic Republic gone, and it's going to happen.
4 crucial conversations today. I'm Negar Mojtahedi, and this is Eye for Iran. American military assets seem to be in place in the Middle East, this as President Donald Trump gave a final warning to the Iranian regime. Joining us now to unpack and look ahead is Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Pleasure to see you. And I hope that the next time we speak will be in much better circumstances. But it's a tough time now. But I think I hope to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I hope that we'll be able to discuss that.
I certainly hope so too, Jonathan. And I also wanted to just start off by acknowledging that Ron Givili, the last hostage who was being held by Hamas in Gaza, has finally been laid to rest. My heart goes out to you. I know this is very significant because that was a promise made that all hostages would return home. And I just wanted to acknowledge that because this is a very painful chapter in Israel's history. For all of us. And now here we are talking about a massacre that is now a painful chapter in the history for the Iranian people as well.
I thank you for acknowledging that. And I think that's a noble thing of you to say and to acknowledge as you are dealing with I think, unprecedented level of brutality and violence against your people, against the Iranian people by the Islamic regime. The mere fact that you even have bandwidth to register anything else, I think speaks volumes of your compassion. And yes, from an Israeli perspective, it's 1 down, 2 to go. 1 goal achieved, which is the return of all the Israeli hostages, live and murdered. And for the first time since the summer of 2014, there are no longer any Israeli hostages in the hands of Hamas in Gaza, not dead and not alive. And that's a very welcome development. But 2 more goals are needed to be implemented. 1 is to disarm Hamas of their weapons. And the third one is to take away control over the Gaza Strip from the hands of Hamas. Hamas has been in control over Gaza for almost 18 years. And as long as they're in control and as long as they have weapons, the bottom line is that there will be terror, there will be fighting, and there will be war and bloodshed again. So anybody, who wants a better future for Arabs living in Gaza, for Israelis living in Israel, should be focused on disarming Hamas, getting them out of control of the Gaza Strip, and then moving forward with rebuilding and helping Arabs there build a better future. But sadly, I'm not sure that that's where things are going. No international stabilization force, no real substance to that board of peace. I hope to be wrong and overly pessimistic, but coming back full circle, you and I remember we've spoken about the outpouring of support, allegedly spontaneous, that we saw in global capitals, in Canada, in cities across the US, Europe, Australia, showing their support for the suffering of so-called Palestinians. What really enrages me, and what I think is so apparent and really exposing, is the deafening silence of the same places that were buzzing with activity, marching for Palestinians with the banners of Hamas and the banners of the PLO and many others, and allegedly people around the world caring about human rights and human suffering. And I asked those people, and I've been asking that and tweeting that, where are you now? Why isn't the suffering of the brave Iranian people worthy of your protests, encampments, condemnations, boycotts, rallies, and all of the other things that we saw all across the world? And I think it's such a revealing moment of the true nature of the people who say that they are champions of human rights, who say that they care about Muslims or minorities or people that are suffering. It's all a facade. It's fake. And if anybody who isn't out on the streets today marching and making their voices heard for the benefit of the brave Iranian people, don't come tell me in the future that you care about human suffering and human lives, because it's just a scam, and I won't even, recognize the validity of any such terms. It's very revealing where people stand.
100%. I completely agree. And not only the silence, but the fact that in many ways, I feel that they're defending and supporting the regime too, because they're doubting the scale of the casualties. They're doubting the images that are coming out. And that's something that I can't understand. And like you said, the suffering of Muslims, the biggest perpetrators who have made Muslims suffer has been the Islamic regime in Iran.
Yeah, and I think it was President Kennedy who said that the only thing that good men have to do for evil to succeed is nothing. And we see a lot of people who perhaps aren't good people, but we see a lot of people doing nothing. Nothing in the face of evil is to support evil. You cannot be neutral, and you cannot say that, let's hear and let's wait for the official opinion, and let's take the Iranian regime by its word, and let's give them credibility, and all of that nonsense. The Iranian regime is brutal. It is oppressing. I think it has ratcheted up the level of brutality since 2 weeks ago, and we're seeing some of the most inhumane and cruel treatment that I remember. And that's saying a lot, because we're speaking about a regime that has been oppressing the Iranian people with the most coercive measures for 47 years. And to do nothing, to try to whitewash away the numbers, to try to insinuate that it's foreign interference, to try to blame other countries, and to try to divert attention and undermine the very legitimate claims of the Iranian people who have been out in millions in Iranian streets, I think is complicity. It is complicity in the butchering and the oppression of the Iranian people. And I hope that anybody who was part in that will eventually pay a price in a public way, and be ostracized and labeled as a supporter of an oppressive regime.
And, the videos and images that, as a journalist, I'm receiving from Iran is beyond a nightmare. It's like ISIS in broad daylight. I saw a video of somebody being a bystander with a plainclothes regime officer being killed with an axe. Another person was beheaded, and literally there are rivers flowing with blood. It's something. It's an unspeakable horror, Jonathan. And speaking of responsibility to protect. This is the mood right now for not just the Iranian diaspora, but those inside Iran. Everybody right now inside Iran is just praying and hoping and watching to see what will be the next steps for the U.S. and also for Israel as well. What is the mood right now for you in Israel? Do you sense that change is coming, that potentially there could be some strikes? What do you feel, or what signs do you see?
Yeah, so on the positive side, I think that the political situation is one where we have a US president that up until now has been a man of his word. Well, where when he has threatened and laid down a red line, he has enforced that red line and done it with creativity, with strength, with resolution, and in a very successful way. And there are many examples of the President Trump doing that. And I think that's a very good situation to start with. Second, I think that the military tools that the US needs in order to conduct meaningful military activity against the Islamic regime and to defend itself against whatever the Islamic regime will try to do if the US takes action against it. I think most of those capabilities and assets are in place and are ready to be deployed. And it took some time for CENTCOM to accumulate the various capabilities and assets that are needed. And judging by the way things look now, almost everything is in place. And now it's really a matter of the actual opportunity, the tactical operational opportunity to strike what needs to be struck by the US. That's one. And second is our political considerations that I'm sure the president has and is making in terms of timing. I think that, and this is only my personal assessment, I think that it's only a matter of time before the US will conduct strikes against the Islamic Republic, which probably will be like a virtual sound of the trumpet of the cavalry. You know, like in Western movies or in American movies when you can hear the cavalry coming. I hope, and I think that that will be the effect of US strikes, strikes that will seek to decapitate, strikes that will seek to severely undermine the command and control of the regime, severely undermine and limit its ability to continue to conduct the oppression that it has been doing, and specifically targeting IRGC and Basij, but not limited to that. That will probably be the opening salvo, with or without specific strikes targeting the so-called supreme leader and his close circle, and perhaps other heads of the military wings and organizations. And I think that is how things eventually will start. But judging from where I sit in Israel, it's very difficult, and I know that you know this much better than I, very difficult really to assess the situation in Iran because of the internet blackout and the oppression and really strangling of the flow of information that the regime has orchestrated. I think it's 23rd day now without internet services. I note with sadness that we had lots of hopes for Starlink and other alternate communication devices. They didn't work, and the Iranian regime, with external help and with their domestic capabilities, were able to basically block those. And we thought that we would have the flow of information. We don't, and that is extremely unfortunate. But the mood in Israel is one where I think a lot of people are asking, okay, when is it going to happen? It's not if it's going to happen, when, and what will the effect be, of course, on the regime. And Israelis care very much about how will the effect be on Israel and whether the Islamic regime will actually follow through with the multiple threats that they have made, and where they're saying if Iran, the Islamic regime is attacked, then they will attack Tel Aviv, even though Israel has no intentions and has not said that it is going to do any first strike attacks against the regime. But to summarize, I'll tell you that even, there are quite a lot of, or I've heard quite a lot of Israelis say, even though we're tired, we've been fighting this long war for more than 2 years. And the last time, the 12 days of fighting with Iran, we had a lot of civilian casualty, and it took a heavy toll on Israel. But I think that there are still a lot of people in Israel who understand that if there's this opportunity to participate in military action together with the US, targeting the actual regime and help bring down the regime or help the Iranian people actually reclaim their country, many Israelis, I think, would say that they are positively inclined to do that because, from an Israeli perspective, two things. One, it's the right thing to do, and this regime is an oppressive, horrible regime. And two, it would mean that all of our enemies, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and the Houthis and many others, would sustain a significant setback because their main backer and funder would lose its capacity to do so, at least for the foreseeable future. So it's a delicate period. People are waiting for when will it happen, what will the consequences be for Israel. But I can say that the Air Force, air defenses, and Home Front Command are on elevated readiness. Still no special guidelines for the population, but definitely ready with two steady fingers on the pulse, checking the situation in Iran, and waiting for the American action.
Yeah, so it's a matter of when, not if, like you said. And I've had a lot of my Israeli friends tell me, Negar, if it means that your people will be free, we're willing to make this sacrifice. So it's,
Yeah,
when we hear that
that's true.
during these dark times, yeah.
Because we have the convergence here of two things, two interests. We have, the interest of self-preservation of Israel and wanting to significantly improve the threat situation around us, getting rid of this horrible terror-supporting, destabilizing regime would be very beneficial, because this regime, other than what it has done domestically inside Iran, which is reprehensible, it's been destabilizing the Middle East for the last 35 years. It's destabilized Lebanon, Syria, the Gaza Strip. They've tried to do it in Jordan. They have destabilized Yemen. Almost wherever you look, there are IRGC fingerprints. And from an Israeli perspective, if we can get rid of that, that would, of course, be a good thing for Israeli security. And the added bonus from an Israeli perspective is freedom for the Iranian people. And, a lot of people, especially people that are older and remember the times when there were diplomatic and security and economic and scientific relations with Iran.
Yeah.
Yeah, and friendship. They long for that, and there's great potential for prosperity and development and trade and many beautiful things. And there's a lot of eagerness for that as well. And as you say very correctly, many Israelis are saying, we're willing to, endure what we need to endure in terms of an Iranian missile attack on Israel, if at the end, this could be a historical change in the region.
And what needs to happen? And you talked about targeting, the regime's apparatus, but so much time has elapsed since the protests broke out and then this bloodshed of a massacre. What strikes need to take place specifically in order for it to have an impact to collapse this regime once and for all? Because, I have to tell you, during the 12-day war, a friend of mine who's an international human rights lawyer was telling me she had a list of those IRGCs who committed crimes against humanity during the Women Life Freedom Movement from 2022 to 23. And she said 90% of them were actually taken out by Israel during the 12-day war. So that is significant. So what needs to happen now to just get rid of this regime?
So this is where it becomes more challenging to assess, because I don't think that anybody could actually forecast and say, if certain targets are struck, then the direct outcome will be a certain outcome. But I think that, if we look at the different types of targets and assets that will be struck, I think that the US strikes, when they happen, will focus on command and control and the regime's ability to exercise power domestically. That is one group of targets, and that is headquarters, the different oppressive organizations, IRGC and Basij, and of course, senior key personnel that are important for the ability. I would assume cyber and communications warfare against the networks and the communications infrastructure of the regime to disable their capacity to do so. And I would assume that there would also be a supporting information campaign that will tell the Iranian people and try to get that out, that now there is an opportunity, that there's air cover for the Iranian people to actually be able to reclaim their country. I have to say, honestly, that, it's uncharted waters in terms of there's no playbook for it and there's no recipe. But I think that's one group of targets that we should anticipate that will be struck. And then the second group of targets are related to Iran's ballistic missiles, where the missiles are located, the silos where they will be fired from, and eventually also the chain of supply and where they are manufactured. Those will be the targets, and of course air defenses, what the little air defenses that are left, if any, they will be targeted probably first. And then the US will have the ability to broaden or to narrow the different strikes that will be done. They could go beyond, to economic targets, which I think the US will greatly try to prevent, because harming the infrastructure would mean that it would be more difficult for the country to get back on its feet and to transition into stability afterwards. So I think that the US will be very careful, oil, gas, refineries, all of that infrastructure, and that the efforts will be focused on the regime. And last but not least, there are quite a lot of new targets or old targets that have been verified and re-verified, belonging to the Islamic Republic's nuclear weapons program. And I think that if and when the situation escalates, they will be targeted as well. Now, looking from an Israeli perspective, I think Israel will focus on nuclear and ballistic missiles and perhaps less on regime targets. But, we've seen the US and Israel cooperate at the highest level, sharing intel, sharing procedures, and really doing some magnificent military activity together. I wouldn't rule that out, and I think that there's a chance of that happening again, both offensively and defensively. And I understand that the Iranians are taking, the Iranian regime are taking active countermeasures, and of course they understand that there will be efforts by the Americans to decapitate and to take out the leadership and to do other, take out meaningful symbols of the regime. They're anticipating this and they're taking active countermeasures, which makes it more challenging. I think that the US is waiting for the operational or tactical opportunity to do a meaningful surprise attack where it has maximum impact. Last sentence. I think we have to be honest here. And if people, dream and hope that this will be a swift, neat, and tidy operation that will eventually lead to the fall of the oppressive Iranian regime, I think we have to calibrate expectations and understand that it's the light at the end of the tunnel, but the tunnel has the potential of being a very tumultuous and difficult period. Now, the brave Iranian people, which has found the courage to stand up and protest against the regime and has been mowed down by this oppressive regime, for sure are not afraid of the instability that will follow. But I think we have to be, honest in our assessment. I don't think it's going to be quick, easy, and clean. I think that there's potential here for an extended period of time of instability and other consequences. I can only hope that the American strikes will be so overwhelming, powerful, decisive, that the regime will effectively cease to be able to effectively control, and that will allow the Iranian people to actually disperse and take back control of its country. But it's a long process ahead, and we're going to have to be very steadfast and patient.
Jonathan, in terms of the instability that comes after, just to close, in post-military action, then what needs to happen, A, to bring the regime to its knees, and then B, to ensure that we have much more of a smooth transition? And obviously that goes beyond a military campaign.
Oh yeah, far beyond. The military is just the opening salvo. and that is what kicks events into action. That is the enabler that can hopefully provide the Iranian people with the ability to reclaim their country. I think we have to be clear that there should be no foreign meddling, no foreign designation of who should be the government of Iran, and that this is internal Iranian business, that the Iranian people will decide what type of governance they want and how it happens, and hopefully that will be done in in a relatively non-violent way, and that has nothing to do with, shouldn't have anything to do with military. But that's of course an extremely sensitive period, and we've seen from other examples around the world that revolutions or the fall of totalitarian regimes, sometimes they can go relatively smoothly, like the fall of the Soviet Union and East Germany, and sometimes things take longer and they're bloodier. I hope that the Iranian people will be able to transition. One big challenge that exists is, of course, the fact that the oppressive Iranian regime has spent a lot of energy and efforts in making sure that there's no viable domestic opposition inside Iran, and that there's no organizational structure, finances, command and control, or hierarchy that can actually bring forth an opposition. This brings into the conversation that we could see what I call a Egyptian scenario, where a senior general in the army, perhaps IRGC, but I think it's far less likely, but army, will step forward and say, we are now going to take control of the country as an interim government in order to transition from the religious totalitarian system into another type of governance, and then we're going to save the country and prevent bloodshed by doing so. I think that's a possibility. Of course, the possibility of the Crown Prince returning and having the ability to rally Iranians around him, either in a transitionary role or in a different capacity. I know that there are mixed opinions amongst the Iranian diaspora and perhaps also inside Iran, and I'm not well versed enough in order to assess that contingency. But bottom line, one challenge, one struggle will be for the Iranian people to, as quickly as possible, find an effective opposition structure that will allow the country to transition once the regime has been unseated and power has been taken from its hands, to actually reclaim the country. Easier said than done, and in most historic examples, that tends to be the messier part. And as you say very correctly, the military stage is a relatively short, intense, and very meaningful period, and then comes a longer stage, which by definition isn't military, but where a lot of things have to happen, at the end of which hopefully that stage will be as short and as peaceful or without violence as possible. And at the end of it, hopefully there will be a new type of governance, again emphasizing here, by the Iranian people of Iran. No foreign intervention, and no other country should have influence on what happens, but helping the Iranian people reclaim their country.
Thank you so much again for your time and for your expertise, and of course, above all, for your compassion and your care for the Iranian people. It means a lot to us.
Thank you, and I pray for good news, and I believe that it will happen.
May there be brighter days for all of us.
Amen.
Amen. Shiva Mahboubi, the co-founder and spokesperson of the Campaign to Free Political Prisoners in Iran. Shiva was once also a political prisoner herself. She joins us now on I for Iran. Welcome to the program, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Negar. Thank you for having me.
Shiva, people are being forcibly injected and killed inside Iranian prisons, sometimes inside morgues, in detention centers. Tell us what you know so far.
Yes, obviously killing detainees and political prisoners or even subjecting them to pharmacological torture is not very new. But what is actually quite shocking is that how they even kill, basically giving them finishing shot, all these injured detainees. And then what they do, they put them among those who were killed on the street, claiming that these people were killed on the street because of terrorist activity, etc. So I guess this is quite new, and they're doing it secretly. And the witnesses that contacted us said that, for example, one of the things they, again, I think is relatively new because they used to do pharmacological torture while the person was inside prison, was saying that you are released on bail. So bear in mind, the family needs to pay loads of money, but even that is not enough. You need to get an injection. And there is no explanation about what it is or any choice. And when the detainee basically protested and said, what is it? I don't want to have injection, which they call it vaccine, the guards. Then he got beaten up and he said, that's the only way you can be released. So no one knows what's that substance. And he couldn't, we insisted that anyone who gets such injection, they need to go and have a test. So he couldn't find any basically doctors that feel safe enough to do that. They said that you need to have to go to somewhere private to basically do that. And you know that with the situation
Well, they're
in Iran,
targeting and killing doctors too, of course. I mean,
absolutely. But even in Iran, it's impossible for families who cannot even have food for money for food to go and pay such a price. And then in another case, another young female that one day after she was released, she died, and no one knows why. So what we're hearing, there is a widespread use of what they say seemingly could be potassium. This is just speculation, obviously. There is no test or anything to prove that, but they get injection before they release some of them. So this is quite shocking. And also the injured in Fashafuye prison, they were just put in front of other prisoners to die without any treatment.
and this is a silent massacre because it's something that's not happening before our eyes. Talk to us about the significance of that.
Absolutely. I mean, what our committee, our campaign keeps saying that there is a massacre that happened on the street and they still arresting people, but there is a hidden one as well that as we talk, it's unfolding. And most likely, as the regime feels these are the last days of their existence, then they start massacring even the current political prisoners in prison. So what do you call that when they take injured detainees, strangle them or shot them and then put them among them, or they put them in mass graves? We have actually one eyewitness that we can obviously identify, say his name or anything, that they witnessed that near Isfahan, near Bagh Rezwan, they were mass graved that they identified that they were putting lime and also some kind of material on the graves, most probably to dissolve the body or basically destroy any sort of evidence. And this is actually first-hand eyewitness from that. So therefore, I mean, we don't know all those detainees who were captured, either they were injured or not, what happened to them, because even families, they don't know where they are.
My God, my God. So brutal. What is, talk about the pattern that you're seeing here with this new method, if you will.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that they have been using psychological, pharmacological torture for years, basically. And we have published a report in 2023 indicating that during the Women Life Freedom protests, they have been using it nationwide, everywhere, basically. But then we can see that now the method they use, instead of executing them and announcing them, which bring more outrage, what they do, they're killing them with injection. This has been happening I would say, especially in the last 5-6 years, it has been intensified and is quite widespread, quite intentional, and it's all over the place, basically all cities. So what you see, it's a silent massacre that's happening. And unfortunately, because it's not called execution or being shot on the street, there is no attention on that on the media, because it's difficult to prove it. How can you, as a family, prove that your child was abducted, been taken to prison, and then shot dead, or being injected some sort of unknown substance? You cannot prove that. That's the problem.
Yeah, and it's hard to get reports. Like you said, doctors are being targeted. They're, like you, trying to dissolve even the grave sites and the bodies of these people to eliminate any sort of evidence. Very
Absolutely.
systematic campaign to kill these people.
It is not coincident. It's completely intentional, systematic, and been thought through, actually. How do they do that? So they leave less evidence. When we were doing our report in 2023, we actually contacted some of the doctors that they knew about it, but they were too scared to give any evidence, any sort of evidence regarding that. So we can see that what they do, they also control lots of doctors. If they in any way they help these people, they're going to be arrested as well. So it's a mass terrorization of the society. I must say that they haven't been successful because people are way more angry than before. But we can see the really silent execution, that's what we call it, that's going on. And I'm really concerned about what's happening and why the international community, they don't have any attention on tens of thousands of detainees and also political prisoners.
So, speaking of which, what can the international community do now, or what would you like to see the international community do now, given this massacre?
I think the first thing, if we're talking about detainees and political prisoners, the first thing they need to do, they need to recall their ambassadors from Iran. They need to shut down the regime embassy and also expel their diplomats for those reasons. One, for massacring people, for abducting actually so many people, in tens of thousands of people. So it needs to be a concrete action, because otherwise the regime knows that there is no consequences for what they do, and they keep doing it. So right now we can see the diplomats are walking around in European countries having a nice life, while people in Iran, their kids it's subjected to the most brutal torture and killing. I mean, when some of these injured people that they had like a deep wound, they would be given a finishing shot. I just heard last night from someone who were in contact with, again, Isfahan, that in one of the Sepas hospital, what they did, they forced all the medical personnel to leave the room, and they strangled all these injured people.
Strangled them to death?
Strangled them to death because they couldn't shoot them. They didn't want anyone to hear the shooting, so they strangled them. And also they have removed all the CCTV from the hospital, so there is no evidence. So you can see how intentionally and systematic they think about not leaving any evidence.
And Shiva, John, is there any precedent for this? I mean, in terms of other countries, like where could somebody get such an idea from? Did we ever see this in happening? For example, I know for a lot of Russian opposition, sometimes they get poisoned or there's a injection of some sort, et cetera, et cetera.
I think they do. I mean, dictators all operate the same. They all use their own each other's experiences, and which is the most killing one. We know that for example, even in terms of other countries, like at the time, like Sepah Pastaran would train people in Iraq how to kill these young people who had demonstration in 2019. So it's many countries, including, as you said, in Russia or some other countries, actually, they use this because it's a very silent way. You don't see any sign on your face. If, for example, if they give me some sort of injection. You don't see any bruise. You don't see anything right away. It works very kind of slowly. And by the time that you're out of the prison, they can claim that it has nothing to do with that because the person was alive. So we can see that pattern that being used. But the only problem is, unfortunately, in terms of Iran, it hasn't been talked about it. Like right now, you said in Russia, whereas in Iran, it has been used for years, but no one talks about it.
That's a very good point. And is there anything else you'd like to add on this incredibly disturbing but important topic?
I think what I want to indicate that what we've seen so far is really a fraction of what's happening in Iran right now. And I think my call is to all people that to make sure that put the detainees and political prisoners in every news, because the problem is now people can run away on the street, they can protect each other, they can hide, but where would political prisoners and detainees go? They are like hostages in the hands of the regime. And we have seen one example of that in the 80s, in the summer of 1988, when they massacred like thousands of political prisoners and no one knew about it. So I'm afraid this might happen again if the international community don't take an action regarding that. They need to specifically press the regime to free all these detainees and political prisoners. So the regime knows that internationally there is a pressure. So one might argue, say, such a regime doesn't care about it, but the pressure always works.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all the incredible work that you do, Shiva, you and your organization. Thank you for joining us on Eye for Iran. One thing on the mind of many Iranians is the fall of the Islamic Republic and how to seek accountability and prosecution of kleptocratic networks tied to the Iranian regime. With us now is Judge Mark Wolf, chair of the Integrity Initiatives International. He is also a retired senior United States District Judge. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Negar, for the opportunity to speak to you and to you, wonderful Persian people.
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you do. So in North America, as you know, and in Western Europe in general, Iranian regime kleptocrats, their network, their families, their middlemen, etc., have transferred billions of dollars in illicit wealth here. Given that you're internationally recognized as an expert in money laundering and anti-corruption law, and how you even helped shape Ukraine's anti-corruption legal framework, where do you even begin now with the prosecution, the seizure of assets of those types of individuals and their networks that are tied to the Iranian regime?
Well, as the current conditions you describe accurately indicate, it's extremely difficult in the current international framework to prosecute corrupt officials from a foreign country or to seize and repatriate their billions of dollars in illicit assets. Uh, Grand corruption, the abuse of public office for private gain, is not just a national issue, it's a transnational issue, an international issue, because kleptocrats, corrupt leaders, generally do not want to keep a large portion of their illicit fortunes in their own countries. They, through shell companies, and there's evidence that the Revolutionary Guard in Iran does this, through shell companies, they launder their billions of illicit assets to other countries around the world, to Canada, to the UK, I'm sure to the United States. And it's necessary to have an international institution to deal with what is really an international problem, plague. And this is why years ago I proposed the creation of International Anti-Corruption Court to address and hold accountable the kleptocrats who are the worst abusers of human rights. Iran demonstrates that for sure. And if you like, I can explain how the International Anti-Corruption Court would operate. It'd be a tremendous asset for the future of Iran.
Yeah, please tell us, and you know, the legal credible pathways now forward to try and get some from justice here.
Well, the existing pathways don't work very well. Uh, as I said, we're dealing with a
Your plan would.
transnational, but the court would. The International Anti-Corruption Court would be a court of last resort. It would prosecute officials and their private enablers, but officials, high officials of countries like Iran that are unwilling or unable to prosecute themselves. And Iran has demonstrated that it's not willing to prosecute its corrupt officials. The Revolutionary Guard has been demonstrated to be very corrupt. The judiciary is uh, believed to be very corrupt and protects high officials in addition. So Iran would certainly be eligible for prosecution in the International Anti-Corruption Court. The International Corruption Court will have a civil division with the power to, when cases are presented to it or developed, uh, freeze, seize, and repatriate, return to Iran in this case, illicit assets. Its primary focus and the original purpose of the court, though, is to create a place where high officials can be the subject of investigation for their complicated financial schemes by expert international investigators, prosecuted by expert international lawyers with the capacity to stand up to the very good defense lawyers that corrupt officials can afford to buy, and judges, expert international judges who have the experience and ability to preside in complex, challenging cases. And if a high official of the Revolutionary Guard, for example, were convicted in a court, that person and the people, the private parties that have enabled these schemes to succeed, who have laundered the money, the bankers, the lawyers, and others, they would be imprisoned. This would do two things. One, if it's actually a nation's leader or a group of the nation's leaders, it could create openings for free and fair elections to put in power honest people, people who are dedicated to serving their citizens, not to enriching themselves. Perhaps more significantly, it would send a message of deterrence. It would discourage people who are tempted to steal vast sums of money from their country, not to do it. Because right now, the worst that anybody has to fear as a practical matter is that if they're exposed and they have to respond, they can just leave their country, leave Iran. Reportedly, the former general manager of Bank Melli, if I'm pronouncing it right,
Melat Yabed.
Reza Kabari, embezzled more than $2 billion and reportedly now lives in Canada.
Yeah, he lives in Toronto. Yeah, and his family. They're all in Canada right now.
And the children of these corrupt leaders live in luxury, and as I said, in places like London.
Not only that, they're being praised. I believe it was Khavari's son who made it to some magazine, you know, top 40 under 40 or something of that nature. So not only are they living a life of luxury, while Iranian people suffer and they are stealing the blood money, essentially the people of Iran, they're also being praised by a lot of people in the West.
Well, this shamefully is true, and they're being praised by some people who make a lot of money, helping them hide their illegal gains.
It's a huge
So
network, isn't it? Right, Judge Wolf? It's a big network. Then they all
it,
benefit from it.
it is a big network, and Integrity Initiatives International, which I chair, through its advocacy for the International Anti-Corruption Court, among other things, is also is both fortifying existing networks and promising to provide a missing link, a place where these corrupt leaders can be prosecuted and punished and imprisoned, to counter these formidable forces of corruption.
And tell us more about what the potential for an independent anti-corruption court, and why haven't we seen it yet? I mean, it's very important, it seems like, and this is a huge issue specifically, especially for the Iranian community and around the world. But
Well, the idea is novel, and for a long time, it was just a concept. But starting in about 2021, Integrity Initiatives International catalyzed and is now coordinating a progressing campaign to create this court. It's been endorsed by more than 350 world leaders, former
wow,
presidents and prime ministers. What's that?
350, eh?
Yeah, 50 former presidents and prime ministers, 2 current presidents. It was endorsed by the European Parliament in an earlier session. It's been endorsed by countries like the Netherlands, Canada, Nigeria, Moldova. There's substantial interest in many African countries, growing interest in Latin American countries. We've had very limited bandwidth. Triple I, as we call it, doesn't have much money and has very few employees. But as I said, we punch above our weight. And there's now a draft treaty being reviewed by about 30 trusted countries and many non-governmental organizations. A coalition has been launched to campaign for this court. So we live at a time where there's generally unusual, if not unprecedented, in the last since World War II, hostility to international institutions, particularly international courts. But we're making significant progress despite the currents in the world. And one thing I'd like to point out is this court would work and be effective even if countries led by corrupt leaders don't join. Because as I said earlier, these corrupt leaders don't want to keep their illicit money, or a large part of it, in their own country. So as you said, there's a lot of dirty Iranian money in London and in the UK. Well, the British have very substantial interest, active interest, in the International Anti-Corruption Court. It's mentioned in their recently released anti-corruption strategy. So if leaders of the Revolutionary Guard, or indeed higher religious officials, launder money into the UK, maybe the UK can't prosecute a president, a prime minister, a nation's leader. They have immunity under international law. Or maybe for evident political reasons, they couldn't comfortably prosecute Iranian leaders who would think they would get a fair trial in the UK. But they could defer to the International Anti-Corruption Court, and those leaders, corrupt leaders, could be prosecuted in that court. So even if Iran doesn't join the court, their leaders will be vulnerable to prosecution there.
Well, yeah, especially with as we see the collapse of this regime, and I think that this independent anti-corruption court is going to give a lot of hope to Iranian people around the world, that they can see some sort of accountability. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and your expertise, and this incredible initiative that has certainly given me a lot of hope. That's really great to see you doing that. That's
Well,
Judge
thank
Mark
you very
joining us
much,
today
and
on I for Iran.
I know you will keep up your vital work, because getting accurate information to people is essential. And the current regime in Iran knows that that's dangerous to it. That's why there's this communications blackout. But it demonstrates the importance of what you're doing, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate in it.
Well, thank you so much. Khosro Isfahani, a senior research analyst at NUFDI, is here with us. Thank you for being here, Khosro.
Thanks for having me, Negarja.
Of course, these are very dark times, and I'm glad that we can all come together and support each other. Khosro, let's start with the war of narratives here. You know, this is regime-affiliated actors who have this two-pronged approach to, in some ways, to delegitimize the exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi and any kind of, you know, I don't want to say foreign interference, but any kind of foreign intervention, we call it responsibility to protect, to do something to help the Iranian people who are unarmed and have no other means to fight this regime. As you can see, they were all killed. So let's talk about what you're hearing and what these people are saying.
So since the start of this national uprising in Iran, you yourself and Iran International have been the victim of this type of influence campaign and disinformation efforts pushed by the Islamic Republic. When the videos were coming out of Iran with people chanting Javid Shah or how loud their supreme leader Khamenei because Pahlavi is returning, people were accusing journalists, independent journalists, of doctoring the videos and adding voiceover to them to fake support for the Crown Prince. That started literally with the start of the protests. It has got even worse that we have people, VOA Persian, Ali Javanmardi, he's literally going on air, threatening the Crown Prince, pushing fake lines and absolute lies, trying to create division, delegitimize the Crown Prince and the camp around him, alleging that people in Iran, no one supports him. Nonsense that anyone with two brain cells and two eyes would believe. That's one line. They are constantly trying to picture the Crown Prince as not having a popular base in the country, despite millions taking to the streets, chanting his name while facing guns and bullets. How many thousands of Iranians got to be killed for these people to hear their voice?
And I wanted to add to that, like, there's videos that came out recently then in Azerbaijan, right? And they are calling for Prince Reza Pahlavi. But then I do see some things on social media alleging that, oh, well, in Azerbaijan, you know, they don't want any form of constitutional monarchy and they want to separate, which is not true. I mean, and if there are any of those voices, that's a very, very small minority of people, right? But they're making it seem as if the entire region is against that.
2 points. One, the Crown Prince has never said that he wants to become king. He has offered himself as a transitional leader. If people decide to participate in a free and fair election and vote for a return to monarchy, they can. That's all he has talked about. He has 3 very clear principles: that we want a secular democracy in Iran, we want human rights for all, and we want Iran's territorial integrity to be preserved. I think and I believe that the majority of Iranians, regardless of their background, which part of the country they live in, we have a very proud nation that finds pride in being Iranian. Iran is not like it's any other case that we have dealt with over the past decades. We have a unified nation with a unified cause that wants to liberate Iran. Then people walk around finding marginal but very loud voices and echoing them about separatism. That has never been a key demand in any of the protest movements that we have been watching. Negar, both of us have been doing journalism and Iran work for almost 2 decades. And we have been watching these protest movements, uprising, the fight of the Iranian nation for reclaiming that homeland very closely. I have never seen separatist tendencies as an actually active element of any movement in the country.
You're right.
And it has been this recycled line that specifically VOA Persian again is pushing it, that Iranians, if the Islamic Republic falls, if the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi is acknowledged as the opposition leader, who he is, has anyone else's name been chanted on the streets? If he's acknowledged by Western powers, it's going to lead to civil war in Iran. These type of fear-mongering, we have been seeing it since the Arab Spring by the Islamic Republic, that if you try to overthrow the Islamic Republic, not even overthrow it, they are going to turn Iran into Syria. Now, with Bashar al-Assad gone in Syria, they have recycled that talking point. Some lunatics come on air and talk about Balkanization of Iran. That's not who Iranians are. That's not where we are headed at. We are a proud nation that is fighting to reclaim its homeland, and we are going to win.
When you see this war of narratives, do you see this as being coordinated? Because, once I did an investigation on a lot of the anti-Israel protests that were happening at university campuses, and we were able to actually map out that a lot of the things that were being said on social media, on the networks, were coming from regime state actors, not from real people, and there was a certain level of coordination, and this was key, so that you would be able to tell that there was a master plan behind all of this. It wasn't just some sort of coincidence, right?
So this actually leads very well into the next point I wanted to make about the second prong of the Islamic Republic's war of narrative against the world and its own people. The second prong of this narrative is that any form of international intervention, delivery of aid to Iranians in any form, any meaningful form, not just words and air that doesn't deliver any results, but actual active intervention on behalf of Iranians, it's going to be harmful. It's going to damage the Iranian cause. It's going to harm Iran's territorial integrity. It's going to harm the future of Iran. Who started that line during the recent protest movement? The moment that we saw a trickle of internet coming back online in Iran, we saw those people who had white SIM cards assigned to them by the regime, giving them extra access to the internet, coming back online on X, on Instagram, and literally pushing this line. The West doesn't have our best interests at heart. If the United States intervenes, it's only for Iranian oil. Iranians are going to be killed in thousands, as if the regime has not killed them.
Already, more than any foreign intervention, anything since any foreign invader, not even Alexander the Great or the Mongols.
Yeah. The thing is, people forget that Iran is a country that has been occupied by an Islamist fascist state for 5 decades. Iranians have been on the front line of fighting this fascism, this Islamist movement for 5 decades. We have bled. I have friends and family who were part of the mass executions. I was part of the 2009 Green Movement, and every cycle of protest after that. We have bled in that fight, and we are going to eventually win, and the victory is at hand. But these people, these stooges of the Islamic Republic, walk in Western capitals and repeat. First, the talking point comes out of Tehran, specifically from a circle that the intelligence ministry enabled during the presidency of Hassan Rouhani through his ICT minister, Mohammad Javad Azari Jahromi. During his term in power, they created a circle of social media influencers, from Puria Astaraki to others. You can add names as well, Negarjan. I'm sure you know all of those people. They created a circle of social media influencers that every crisis that the Islamic Republic faces start pushing narrative lines. When the Ukrainian airliner was down by the IRGC, they were on the front line of lying about it was an accident. Airbuses are bad planes, and all those lies. They continued until the last moment when IRGC itself claimed responsibility. When the 2019 protest movement started, people were killed in hundreds on the streets, internet was shot. These people were still online. They went on at the time it was Twitter, they went on social media and blamed protesters for blocking the roads because they missed a doctor's appointment. Arvan Cloud, its CEO, literally posted that.
And he's in the West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these people have continued repeating these type of narratives being cooked in the intelligence ministry, amplified by the ICT ministry, and then repeated in the West by these people, by people who have been stooges of the Islamic Republic, who have lobbied for this regime, from the likes of NIOC to the responsible statecraft to the rest of them. They have this inherent, especially those who live in the West, who hold positions in academia, they have this hatred for Western civilizations, that any type of force that is against West, is against the United States, they align themselves with that type of force. We saw that after the October 7th, these useful idiots echoed their message, echoed the message of Hamas and other terrorist groups on the streets, on Western campuses. Universities were occupied by these people. They are doing the same thing with Iranians. We are being killed in thousands, and these people are repeating the talking points of the Islamic Republic.
I wanted to add to that I remember my colleague, Arash Alahi, and this is a few months after October 7th, he interviewed, a young American of Italian origin, and he was holding the flag of the Islamic Republic at one of those anti-Israel protests. And he's like, why are you doing this? And Arash explained to him what the persecution of the Iranian people, especially of women, minorities, people of different sexual orientations, etc. And he just literally went, "Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. I didn't know that. But I support the Islamic Republic because they're anti-Zionists." And that was like purely the only reason why he was supporting them. It was just so bizarre for me to hear. And now, there was a recent CNN report. I know you saw it because I saw you posting about it on social media. And the reporter, Frederick, goes, at the end of his package, goes, "Yeah, in the wake of those large protests," as if it was some sort of minor afterthought or some sort of, minor footnote that he should get out there. And this is coming from a credible international news agency like CNN. So when you see something like this echoing what the regime is doing, how do you think we got to this point?
About journalists like Frederick and the CNN, they are obsessed with having access to what, I don't know. Whatever they get out of someone like Ghalibaf, he did an interview with the parliament speaker the other day. You can literally read that on the official website of the Islamic Republic's parliament. You send a journalist, CNN sends a journalist to Tehran to interview Ghalibaf so he can repeat the same talking points that he had given on the state broadcaster. What's the point? What does that access bringing to the world? They are obsessed with adding another line to their resumes that, yes, I visited Iran 3 times and I reported on 2 elections and 1 protest movement. They walk on the blood of thousands of Iranians who have been killed in cold blood and look into the camera with no shame, and repeat the talking points of the regime. They are useful idiots. The likes of the CNN, look at how Americans look at CNN these days.
Yeah.
A large portion of this country doesn't respect that outlet
They've
because
lost
of
credibility
exactly
for
that.
sure. Yeah, they definitely have lost credibility. And how does it make you feel? I mean, personally, it infuriates me. Infuriates me. Both of us are journalists.
The thing is, I started working as a journalist when I was back in Iran. At some point, I stomached a lot of personal abuse, aside from the threats and interrogations, individual personal abuse, things that I have not talked about, including sexual assault.
I'm
I
sorry.
worked on those cases because it meant that I was getting stories out of the country.
I'm sorry, Khosro. I
People
didn't know. I'm
inside
so
the
sorry.
country, journalists, our colleagues are putting their lives on the line. They are sacrificing so much, each of them, to get the truth out. Citizen journalists, how many of them have been killed because they were filming a protest? How many citizens, normal citizens, have been shot at because they were filming protests?
Zahra
Yet,
Kazemi, who even had a visa to do her work there.
yeah,
Canadian.
and these journalists walk on the blood and sacrifice of every journalist and citizen journalist that is putting their lives, the lives of their loved ones on the line to shed light on the truth, shed light on the abuse that the Islamic Republic is doling out. And they are silent. They are complicit in the Islamic Republic's crimes. It's in the past, if you asked me this question, I would have responded that it makes me frustrated and angry. I have no frustration and anger for these people anymore. We have one enemy and that's it. We want the Islamic Republic gone. This is the final battle, and we are going to shoot until the last bullet. Either they survive or us. That's it. Pejman Ghalipur's mom the other day in Dusseldorf, she gave a very powerful speech. She said that we are a nation of 80 million people that is fighting against the Islamic Republic. You have killed our children. Kill more of us. Kill as much as you want. Even if one is left alive, she will dance on your grave. That's where Iranians are with their struggle for liberty. We are done. The Islamic Republic got to go. The world can wake up and come to our aid, or they can watch. We are going to win. Iran has survived occupation after occupation over its long history. Our culture, our resilience has survived. Nothing can erode that.
That's really inspirational, Khosro, and it really speaks to how resilient Iranian people are.
Yeah, there is this story that I have from the protest movement after the 2019 November uprising, Aban Khunin. We suffered so much during that period. I was in the country. I watched my countrymen being killed, massacred. Immediately when internet came back online, we, with a small group of friends, got together. Someone bought some bootleg alcohol because it's banned in Iran, a small speaker playing music. We got some food. We got together. We talked, we laughed, we danced, and we continued fighting. We are fighting for life, a whole nation. We love life. You're Iranian yourself, Negarjan. Your audience, non-Iranians, I'm sure if they are watching Iran International for one reason or another, they have interacted with Iranians.
Yes.
We love partying and having a nice time, having good food, dancing, singing. These are the core elements of our culture. That celebration of life, that deep beating heart that always seeks life, has survived over centuries. Iran has been occupied in the past. Iran has survived. This round, we are determined that this is the last battle against the Islamic Republic. It's going to be a long march for rebuilding Iran. But liberation is at hand, and we are going to rebuild that country. And people inside the country have absolute clarity about what they want, where they are, how they are going to achieve it. We have seen them grow cycle after cycle in the country. When Islamic Republic came to power, women were the first group that woke up. March 8, 1979, they were en masse on the streets saying no to Sharia law. They were pushed aside. In the 80s, we had the mass executions of political dissidents because they refused the Islamic Republic's oppression. In 90s, we had students demanding freedom of speech. In 2009, we came to the realization that we are citizens. We want our vote to be counted. The regime didn't have that either. Then we come forward demanding economic justice. Then we come forward to women life freedom movement. That slogan in itself, equality for all, freedom, and being able to live a normal life, being incorporated in the world. But that's all these movements, all of them, lacked one element. They didn't have a leader. In the past, we went from one cause to another, leaderless, without a head, without someone that we can look up to, trust, and march behind. The thing is, Iranians have always had someone they can trust. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, over the past 5 decades, this man has had a very clear message. The 3 principles that he has put forward are very clear. And I think and I believe that the majority of Iranians are aligned with those principles. We want our country free in a secular democracy, human rights for all, and preserving the nation and its territory. That's simple. And this man has never made a deal with the Islamic Republic, has never been part of the regime. He has never shed Iranian blood. He's clean, he's decent, and he's determined to lead Iran through the transition period. That's why people in our motherland are chanting his name,
Yes.
despite facing guns and bullets, despite being killed in thousands. Last night, Iran International published videos out of Iran. People after 40,000, 36,000, according to Iran International.
That we can confirm, yes, and we know it's much more than that, of course.
Yeah. We haven't even heard the extent of the violence. Everyone that you talk with, we are still holding.
We're just scratching the surface. I had an interview with Shiva Mahboubi, who was a former political prisoner, and she was like, we still don't know the extent. Like and we talked about this vaccine that they're administering on a lot of political prisoners and protesters and whatnot, whether they be in the detention centers, the jails, the morgues. And in order to be released, they have to have this vaccine, and it shuts down their organs and kills them within a matter of hours or days. Another silent massacre is happening. Like this is pretty extreme. And you know, you've lived in Iran through so many of these brutal crackdowns, but give us an idea compared to the past to now of just how bad this is in the history of Iran.
The darkest comparison that I have heard is what the Islamic Republic did during this short period was even worse than the mass executions of 1980s. And the numbers show that. Both of us have worked on verifying deaths, Negarjan. When I was at BBC a couple of years ago during the Women Life Freedom Movement, I literally did forensic work for them. I went through hours and hours of families washing the dead bodies of their loved ones so I can capture a face and compare it to the person's ID documents. So I can confirm that yes, this is the right name. This person was killed. Those dark days are fading in comparison to what we are seeing right now. The other day, I was watching photos coming out of Iran of infants, a couple month-year-old infants, their bodies demolished by a bullet. Have you seen a body hit by a bullet? I hope you haven't. But an adult body, there is a ton of bone and meat to it. An infant is small. What does a bullet do to an infant? That's the level of brutality we are watching. The other day, I was receiving testimonies of dead bodies of protesters being beheaded on the streets. Beheaded on the streets. I have worked on war crimes in Syria. And what we are seeing right now, Syrian friends are reaching out to me, extending solidarity, because they know what we are seeing. This nightmare is on another level. The number of people that were killed during 2 days. 2 days. It's industrial level of violence and brutality. It's absolute pain and rage. But the thing is, with every person that you talk in Iran is carrying the same pain and rage. I was on phone a couple of minutes ago with a friend. He has lost 5 friends. 5 friends. How many of us have lost 5 friends in a week? The other day I was talking with another friend, a father and a son, 15-year-old son. They went on the street, only the son returned. They don't even have the body. How many of these stories we are carrying, each of us? We are carrying their blood. Their blood is strengthening us. Their blood is the fist that is going to bring down the Islamic Republic. The other day, someone asked me, Do I think that world is coming to Iranians' aid or not? My response was, it doesn't matter. Iranians have woken up. We have gone through a sea of blood. We have sacrificed so much. We have buried so many people. We have buried so many loved ones. We have lost so much. We have lost so much. To even look back, the only option that Iranians have right now is marching forward. That's the only option we have.
Yes.
Either we die or we reach liberty. That's how Iranians are treating it inside the country. Every message that I receive, it's a message of pain but resolve. A pain but resolve. It's repeated in every call, every message. People are done. They want the Islamic Republic gone, and it's going to happen.
For sure it's going to happen. There's no way we can go back to any of this. It's impossible, really. Khosro John, is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't touched on that you'd like to get out there?
One key element. Iranians have been fighting this fight for 5 decades. During different periods, the world ignored us. They told us that human rights is a Western value, that they cannot impose it on Iran. We shouldn't measure Iranian population and their needs with their Western counterparts, as if we are not human and it's not human rights. We are demanding equality. We are demanding freedom, and we are going to achieve it. Some world leaders are waking up. Some have promised us aid. Iranians have a glorious history. We are going to keep marching until we reach liberty. People can hear our call. They can stand by our side, or they can ignore us again. We are not going to lose this battle. They can lose our friendship in future. Iranians don't forget who stood by them when they were killed in thousands.
Oh, thank you so much, Khosro. That was very inspirational talk. I really appreciate your time. Thank you. That's Khosro Isfahani joining us on Eye for Iran.
Thanks for having me.
Well, if you like this episode, you can hit the like button, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And you can also sign up for our weekly briefing newsletter at iranintl.com/newsletter. And you can also check out our dedicated English website at iranintl.com/en.